Alright, we'll get on to the video in just a second, but today I should probably do something I should have done a long time ago. Need to plug our board game. Christmas is coming up, so if you need a gift for yourself for the holidays or something, we do have a board game that is out. It's actually more of a card game. The very, very short version of it, and we'll get on to the video you're actually here for, is if you've ever played Magic the Gathering, you kind of get the gist. It is a dueling card game, but before you immediately exit out of this enraged, because you can't do another trading card game and all that stuff. It's not a trading card game. It is a one and done, buy the box, you have the whole thing, all expansions included. Because I thought about doing expansions and I decided against it. Dueling card game. So I liked playing Magic the Gathering, personally. I really liked the combat system, feeling like a super cool mage guy. I didn't love trying to keep up with it in card packs and stuff, and I felt like if I didn't spend money, I was just going to lose. So we designed a game, all around replayability and value for your money. Inside is 27 playable characters. Each is a different amount of health, strings, and initiative. Strings is how many monsters you can control at the same time. Health is obviously your health, and you all have special abilities and things like that. So it's fun to try out all the different characters. There's 18 different decks of minion types, so within each deck is a different allocation of minions. Like there are angels is one deck, undead is another deck, things like that. So there's a lot of combinations to try there. You grab 2 decks you want, your opponent grabs 2 decks they want, you shuffle all 4 to make a central draw pile, and that makes a marketplace for both players throughout the whole game. And then you use those strings I mentioned before to control some minions. If they die, you get your strings back to buy someone else. You kind of mix and match minions and try and defeat your opponents. So it is a dueling game like that. There's a video telling you how to play it. If you don't feel like reading rules, there's obviously rules inside. If you go over to the store, now before you panic, explanation. It's $50 for the base game in the United States. That includes shipping and that includes taxes. So $50, you put it in, that's it, it's done. That amount won't increase. So if you take out the shipping and the taxes from there, it's really like $25, but shipping like doubles it, right? So yeah, it's $50. It's not actually that much more expensive than anywhere else. It's just shipping costs a fuck ton of money. Same with the international shipping. You'll see it's $75. You might be like, that's insane. I just shipped a review copy over to the United Kingdom, and shipping that box over to the United Kingdom cost me $65. So, yeah. It's pretty expensive to ship things internationally, so that stuff just happens. But anyway, if you need a Christmas present or something, pick one of those up. It is a ton of fun. We have 2,000 copies printed. I've sold 500 of them over the last year. And we have only gotten positive reviews. I think the only negative thing anybody's had to say is that I used a different artist for each of the decks. You can see in the right-hand picture some of the decks laid out on the table. I used a different artist for each one to give them their own feel, and some people wanted the game to feel more internally consistent. But nobody's complained about the gameplay. People think it's a lot of fun. We've hosted some tournaments here on the channel. So if you're really curious about this, you can go back in my live streams and look for We Play Our Board Game and see if you like it there. But yeah, it'd be really nice and get some board games out of our basement so that Grace doesn't leave me. On to the Red Duke. Generic fantasy music is going in the background. That means we're good to go for another lore video, this time with the Red Duke, the Scourge of Aquitaine, the Bretonnian vampire terror. This is not going to be as long as other lore videos because the Red Duke's lore isn't particularly long. In the Omnibus Undeath Ascendant, he is 1 story out of 3, so we're covering about 300 pages, maybe 200 pages worth of material. Really not that bad. But he is a cool character. As far as vampire counts go, he is my favorite character so far. He has a lot of nuance to him that I'm hoping to show here. But enough blathering. The type of person the Red Duke is, we can start off by just saying where the book starts off. There's a troubadour, a bard of sorts, telling the story of the Red Duke in a bar. He tells the generic version that everybody knows. The Red Duke was a corrupt, evil, terrible man, and he fought King Louis the Righteous, a Grail Knight, at a battle of Saren Field. All of Bretonnia united against him, and all of Bretonnia crushed him. And he was impaled, burned alive, and died. For real this time. After his round of applause, the troubadour goes upstairs to his room, and when he's trying to sleep that night, a mysterious figure walks up to him and says, I really liked your show, can I have an autograph? And the troubadour's like, what? No, get the hell out of my bedroom. And the Red Duke said, listen here, sir, I'm gonna get that autograph. After much pants shitting occurred, the Red Duke sat him down and said, actually, I really liked your delivery. You're a good singer. Really liked the flourish you gave some of the stuff, but some of your facts are a little bit off, and we're gonna straighten this out. So I don't know. He's funny. He's great. I love the Red Duke. Anyway, the book kind of goes back and forth between two different timelines. It's not time travel, but it's like the past and the future. That makes this very difficult to talk about in that way. So I'm just going to go chronologically through the Red Duke's life, but this will spoil pretty much the entire book. If you are interested in reading it, then you'll just need to stop the video. So, the Red Duke, El Sif, which translates to the Sword. He was born the eldest child to the Duke of Aquitaine. Aquitaine is apparently the richest and most fertile land in all of Bretonnia. He had a younger brother. His name was Louis. Now, Louis was chosen when he was older to become a Grail Knight by the Lady of the Lake and chosen to be the next king of Bretonnia. And the Red Duke honestly didn't really bat an eye at this. He doesn't seem to covet his brother's position. He doesn't seem to hold any ill will against his brother. He loves his brother, and he fights alongside him very frequently. The Red Duke is passionate about three things. Three things he'll broach no offense, take no shit about anything, and no one can take these things away from him. He loves his wife. He is the best swordsman in all of Bretonnia by far, and is super happy to show it. And he is the Duke of Aquitaine. And as soon as his brother was made king, some people kind of worried. They're like, man, is the Red Duke going to take that okay? Maybe he thought he should be king because he's such a good swordsman. He's like, nope, chillin'. King Louis seems great. Love that guy. So that was kind of heartening. Anyway, as they grow up together, like I said, he fights alongside his brother in several wars, and one of the biggest wars of Bretonnia's history is the Crusades. They went down to Araby to fight against Mehmed the Butcher, a sultan, and all of Bretonnia went down there with some Empire mercenaries lumped in there as well. And while fighting, the Red Duke frequently was outnumbered and far from home, but still managed to triumph several times. And he was getting such acclaim that people even regarded his orders over those of King Louis, which could have been a problem, but apparently these two brothers actually have a good relationship because Louis is like, yeah, my brother's a gangster. Listen, no, he's great. Not all was well, though. The Red Duke got orders from one of his captains that he was supposed to meet Louis just outside of camp for new orders and a new strategic battle plan. And as he rode out there, he did not find King Louis. He found 10 assassins from the Arabians. And they circled up their horses around him and started throwing daggers at him. He blocked most of them out of the air, and then he started running at these people and fighting them. And out of the 10, he killed 8. He killed 8 in an ambush before he got cut one time. Not even like stabbed, not impaled, just cut. And his vision blurred, and he fell off of his horse, and he was struck by a very deadly snake poison that the Arabians use. So he was paralyzed and going to die. Of the 2 people left, one was a Bretonnian that the Red Duke fought desperately to kill before the poison actually took hold of him. And the other one was another Arabian. But before these 2 could finish him off in his prone state, a dark rider came out of nowhere, descended way too quickly upon the fight, because the Red Duke saw him in the distance, and then he blinked, and the guy was like right next to him, killing these guys. And the dark-cloaked figure leaned down and revealed his face in the moonlight. He had long fangs, longer than a normal human, and the Red Duke immediately knew that he was staring at a vampire. A very specific vampire, actually. Abarash. Abarash is one of the original vampires like Vlad von Karstein. That era. He wanders the world and doesn't really sit around like most vampires and build an empire. He just kind of is a wanderer who appreciates martial prowess above all else. And he sits there, and Abarash talks to the Red Duke for a bit, telling him how great of a swordsman that the Red Duke is and how much Abarash enjoyed watching him fight. And he said, listen, that poison coursing through your veins is probably going to kill you. And then after I bite you, the sun might kill you while you're laying out here in the middle of nowhere. But I like you. I like the cut of your jib. I think you're going to live. So I'm just going to... He slits a little bit of his wrist. He's like, I'm just going to put this blood in your mouth. and I'm gonna turn you into a vampire. You just go make me proud, boy. And Red Duke was like paralyzed, so he can't do anything, but he was like inside, he was desperately like, no, please don't do that. Come on, bro, just let me die. I don't want to be a vampire. I don't want to be a big spooky bad guy. And Ambrose kind of goes, and too bad you're a vampire. Bye. And rides away into the night. Soon after, the Red Duke's own retainers find him. He still can't talk very much. He is still very paralyzed. And one of his retainers, by the name of Dumaine, is his last name. We're not going to go into first names because there are way too many French characters in this book, so we'll just stick with Dumaine. Dumaine finds him in the sands and calls over others. The Red Duke musters all of his willpower to get out one sentence, and it is, leave me here. Dumaine hears him, looks at him confused, shakes his head, and then just assumes that his lord must be like delirious from poison and whatnot, so he ignores the order to leave him here. The Red Duke, knowing he is corrupted, is spared. And he will never forgive Dumaine for sparing him, as we will see. Now, once he's taken back to his tent, King Louis debates what to do about the Red Duke's poisoning. The war with Araby is mostly wrapped up, and for all of his achievements, King Louis is like, listen, nobody's ever survived this poison. My brother's probably dead, but he deserves to die in Aquitaine, his home. Let's get him back there. The Red Duke is then put on a boat to go home, but he does not get very far. The night before... Actually, yeah, he's not put on the boat yet. He's taken to a harbor. The night before they ship out, the Skaven attack their camp. And while he's in his tent, the Red Duke awakens to hear the sounds of fighting, and then there's Skaven that run in, they're killing his guards and stuff, and they see him lying prone, and he looks up at them, and even though he wants to die, he doesn't want to die to fucking Skaven. So he's like, please, someone save me. Obviously can't say anything, he's still paralyzed from the poison, but he's staring at that, and he's just hoping someone will notice him. And someone does notice him. Another retainer of the De'Abik, comes into the tent, kills a couple Skaven that are next to him, and he sees one sitting right above the Red Duke. De'Abik looks at him, the Red Duke and him make eye contact, and De'Abik walks away. Not out of cowardice, because he just killed two Skaven, there's only one left, but he walked away, and it's pretty clear that he's in on this plot to kill the Red Duke. He had something to do with the Red Duke being ambushed outside, so he's like, what the fuck? That's messed up. But Dumaine comes in again, kills the last Skaven, saves the Red Duke, and the Red Duke's like, Dumaine, my boy, you didn't let me die in the desert like I told you to, but you saved me from a Skaven, you son of a bitch. I'll almost forgive you. Almost. Then he gets put on the boat. When they're on the boat starts to sink. De'Abik is very upset because his conspirator, who we don't know yet, his conspirator decided to kill him along with the Red Duke by sinking the whole ship. De'Abik's mad about this. He helps Dumaine get the Red Duke off of the boat before it sinks, and they sail in a long boat with a few knights back to Astalia, because they were like halfway across the channel when they went down. But they apparently make it. The Red Duke is happy to see his guys working well together again. In Astalia, on their way home, they're dragging the Red Duke along in a baggage train. There's only a few Bretonnian knights. They really aren't that imposing of a force, and an orc war boss leads his horde down to fight them. Now, I shouldn't say a horde. It sounded like it was like 50 greenskins at most, but still, 50 greenskins versus 7 wounded, tired knights who are beset by carrying this baggage train of their wounded lord. They stood no chance. A couple of knights get slaughtered. The orc war boss is roaring at them. And seeing brave and noble knights get struck down by just this filthy heathen really bothers the Red Duke. And he hasn't been able to talk. He hasn't been able to move for like 2 weeks at this point. But he's over it. Well, he's not over it. But his rage awakens in him this hunger, a hunger he's never known before that you and I know is vampirism. But he still doesn't fully know what's going on with his body. But he sits up and he just feels stronger than he ever has. And he rushes over in a blur and just karate chop, karate kid kicks, smashes this orc war boss around. And the orc war boss tries to use a cleaver to like chop down on him or something. And the Red Duke just grabs his hand, snaps it, and then breaks the giant orc's neck by just grabbing his head and twisting it like 720 degrees until his neck like pulps itself and his head's no longer connected to his body. Then he goes on a rampage, kills a whole bunch of greenskins, stares at his greenskin blood-filled hands and thinks about drinking it, but the thought of drinking it horrifies him so much that he passes out. Now, apparently, this is going to be one of many instances of his men not really reading the room, but apparently his men were like, that was badass. Get him back on the carriage, let's get him to Bretonia, this man's a hero. And I'm like, that was really fucked up, and you guys need to reassess. But okay. Whatever. Anyway, I forgot to mention, he did order Dumaine to leave him to die again. He's like, please, just I'm a monster, leave me to die. And Dumaine said, nah, bro, you're good. So again, he's mad at Dumaine for the second time, ignoring his orders to just let him die. They get him all the way back to Aquitaine. The Red Duke has returned. He has not died from the poison yet. And this really stresses out de Godeval. I don't know, man. This fucking guy. It's his steward. It's his steward in Aquitaine. Now, Charles de Gaulle. Charles de Gaulle, I made that up, is King Louis's, so the Red Duke's younger brother is King Louis, king of all Bretonia. De Godeval is King Louis's wife's dad. So he's King Louis's father-in-law. He is also the steward of Aquitaine. Now, his daughter's married to King Louis. That's great. But the Bretonian royalty is not hereditary. It's chosen by the Lady of the Lake. So when her and King Louis have a son, that son doesn't get all of Bretonia. He gets whatever his dad's original holdings were. His dad's original holdings was nothing. The Red Duke is the Duke of Aquitaine by blood right. He's the older son. And he's currently ruling Aquitaine. So de Godeval is revealed to have orchestrated this with the Beak guy. Del Beak. Everybody has a D in front of their fucking name. Anyway, he ordered it with Del Beak to get the Red Duke killed by the Arabians in Araby using the poison. And then when the Red Duke's dead, he and his wife had not had a child yet, so they had no heir. So when he died, the Duchy of Aquitaine would go back to King Louis, and King Louis's children would inherit the Duchy of Aquitaine after Louis dies. So that de Godeval's line would now rule Aquitaine, right? So it's revealed that he wanted the Red Duke to die, so he sends an assassin in to kill the Red Duke in his paralyzed, sleeping state. The Red Duke does not have any of that. As soon as the assassin gets in there, the Red Duke snaps up, grabs his face, drags it to his, and just sinks his fangs into his neck, bleeds him dry, and then after drinking all this blood, he's finally strong enough to get up. He walks over to Godeval after hearing some conspiring stuff while he was supposedly asleep or whatever. He has vampiric ways of figuring out things. He knows that this guy's behind all of his plots. He drains him nearly dry of blood and then chucks him out of a window. Now, what he doesn't know, if he doesn't kill somebody, that'll turn them into a vampire. So he accidentally turns de Godeval into a vampire, but he left him so close to death that the guy went kind of insane and is mostly mindless. But anyway, de Godeval's the first of his vampiric followers. He doesn't care about it yet. He goes looking for his wife. And he comes across someone from his house, and he goes, "Where's my wife?" And the person goes, bro, I don't know how to tell you this, but when your wife heard that you died in Araby, she didn't hear the nuance of you were kind of poisoned, but you're still alive maybe, and you were being brought back to... She thought you were dead. She jumped out of a window. She killed herself. And the Red Duke's like, the fuck? So he loses his shit. So the Red Duke has 3 things he loves in life that I pointed out at the start of this. He loves being the Duke of Aquitaine. He fucking loves it. He loves fighting, sword to sword, man to man. And he loves his wife. One of those 3 things is gone. She killed herself because a bunch of traitors tried to kill him and then told her he was dead before it was confirmed, and then she killed herself. Okay. But he's still the Duke of Aquitaine. He can still fight like a motherfucker. Well, he is confirmed to be a vampire. He's not very secretive about it. This is strangely not a problem for a large portion of Bretonians. All the Knights of Aquitaine are like, well, he's still our Duke, so he's our Duke, we'll follow him. And then there's a bunch of knights that come from all over saying, hey, Red Duke, we heard you're like the best with the sword. Teach me how to use a sword and I'll serve you, Vampire Daddy. So while he's raising skeletons and zombies, he also has human knights like flocking to him. That's a bit weird. So, now remember, King Louis loves his brother. He absolutely loves his brother. He didn't want the Duchy of Aquitaine. His father-in-law conspired this to get him the Duchy of Aquitaine without his knowledge so that his father-in-law's grandchildren would have it, right? But when King Louis gets back to Bretonnia and people go, yo, your brother is a vampire. That's how he lived through that poison, and he's raising undead in Aquitaine. King Louis goes, okay, as a Grail Knight and a rational human being, we gotta fucking kill that guy. So he raises an army to stop the undead. But to the Red Duke, and his kind of crazed mind at this point, but also, to be fair, from his perspective, he thought de Gaudevan was working with King Louis to take back Aquitaine, and then King Louis raises an army to come kill him and take back Aquitaine. Now, you and I, as readers and as third parties, can say, he's taking it back from you because you're an undead monster to him, and you don't own Aquitaine because you're dead. But to the Red Duke, he's like, this is mine? You've never had a problem with it being mine? What the fuck, bro? So the Red Duke and his mortal knights, his undead knights, and all of his undead subjects and his mortal subjects go to war with all of Bretonnia. All of Bretonnia. It's Aquitaine versus all of them. And the fucked up part is it's kind of close. It's kind of close between the Red Duke being an amazing commander and apparently Aquitaine really is that rich and prosperous because, man, they had a lot of troops. Comes down to this final fight at Sarenfield. At Sarenfield, the prophetess, what's her friggin' name? Isabeau, warns the king, King Louis, to only fight during daylight, which he does. He sits in the middle of the daylight, and he baits the Red Duke out through various machinations. The Red Duke shows up, and Louis is kind of surprised he shows up in the middle of daylight, but the Red Duke casts a spell and gets dark clouds to surround the entire battlefield. Then a very bloody fight ensues, as my computer gives me a ping. That was loud and annoying. Anyway, giant battle ensues. It's very close. It comes down to King Louis versus the Red Duke himself. They fight back and forth for a while, and then a ray of sunlight creeps through as the prophetess Isabeau disperses the black cloud directly above the fight where the two are fighting. And as the Red Duke is stunned by the sunlight, he's just like, shit, okay, that's sudden. I'm not dying or anything. I can handle the sunlight. I'm a master vampire, but like, man, that's surprising. There's a giant spear in my chest. King Louis does impale him during his moment of being stunned, because King Louis ain't no wuss of a fighter. He is a Grail Knight, after all. So as soon as his opponent shows any weakness, he impales him, holds him on his lance, and the Red Duke dies. Quotations. So, he's dead. The Battle of Sarenfield is over. Most of the undead fall flat. Some of them try and retreat. Some of the ones with more of binding to them fall back, including Sir Corbinian, which was the Red Duke's leader of his living knights, who was turned into a White King towards the end because of a lady. Sir Corbinian's like, I want to settle down and have a family. And the Red Duke's like, serve me forever! And killed him, turned him into a White King. But regardless, so Sir Corbinian and a lot of the Red Duke's knights retreat. They'll be important later. So the Red Duke's dead, totally dead, super dead. You stabbed him through the chest. He's the deadest he's ever been. All vampires die when you just stab him in the chest. That's what King Louis says over and over again to himself. And Prophetess Isabeau walks up to him and is like, bro, we gotta burn his body. And King Louis is like, no, that is not how the Duke of Aquitaine is to be buried. We will bury him in the monument. And then Isabeau's like, bro, he is gonna stand up the moment you turn around. No, that is ridiculous. So King Louis throws him inside of a marble coffin and walks away. Run, stun, job done. The prophetess Isabeau turns around, knows 100% the Red Duke is going to stand up, and she casts some spells on the coffin to seal it from the outside with magic. About an hour later, the Red Duke stands up, brushes himself off, good to go. Looks good, pushes on the door, does not open. Pushes on the door really hard, does not open. And starts an 1,000-year panic where he is thirsty, he is going increasingly insane, and he's clawing at the walls, and no one can hear him, no one can help him, He is alone. Now, if you know anything about vampire lore in general, Vargulfs and Vargeists are vampires that gave into their hunger or went insane. The fact that the Red Duke doesn't turn into one of those things over 1,000 years is actually wild, but it also has consequences. Flash forward to part 2. So that was one timeline. That's the end of one timeline. The other timeline of the book is 1,000 years in the future. De Elbeek, the heirs to that guy who was betraying the Red Duke, and where the hell? Dumaine. The Dumains, the one that were so loyal to the Red Duke that they wouldn't let him die despite their orders. Those two families hate each other and have been fighting pretty much ever since that moment over some perceived slight that's long lost to time. The Dumains currently have way the upper hand. They have a guy named Sir Armand, who is the current best sword in all of Bretonnia, and he is slapping De Elbeek. The easiest way to think of the De Elbeeks is Denethor from Lord of the Rings. That's them. Because the start of the book, he throws his last son, who's like barely out of being a teenager, versus the best swordsman in all of Aquitaine. And when the best swordsman in all of Aquitaine is like, you don't want this fight. And the other one's like, yes, I do! And then he gets beat. And the Sir Armand's like, all right, go back to your father. You lost the duel. It's fine. And then the other guy cheats. He does a bunch of dishonorable things. The crowd is horrified. And Armand bodies his ass and kills him. And then De Elbeek is like, no, I sent my teenage son against my opponent, and then he fought with no honor and he dishonored my name. Damn you, Dumains! This is your fault! My actions are your fault! And he's really stupid and annoying. But, whatever. So those two hate each other. It's all good. And then Sir Armand goes to the grave of the Red Duke. He doesn't know it's the Red Duke. And he thinks he hears something. And a weird hermit knight called Sir Marlolf? Some guy with another fucking French name. Shows up, waves him off, says, hey, don't loiter around here, go away. De Elbeek, the Denethor-like guy, gets his last living relative, Luther, which is his nephew, and they go find a witch, and they get this witch to help them free the Red Duke. Now, they don't know they're freeing the Red Duke. Honestly, the witch doesn't even know what's in there. She just knows there's power. And the Count said, hey, I need the power to slay Sir Armand and avenge my family name. And the witch is like, I know where power is. So they open up the Red Duke's coffin, and she's like, I sense a lot of power in there. Let's go get it. And then the Red Duke comes out. He's like, I am so fucking thirsty, you guys. And he kills all of them. Just murders all of them. And the witch who let him out, he turns her into a banshee by the horrible things he inflicts upon her soul. And he kills everybody besides one necromancer whose name's Renar. And the necromancer used to just be an acolyte of the witch, and now he's the last one left, so he's a necromancer. So now with a banshee and a necromancer and a bunch of dead people, the Red Duke's like, okay, the fuck? What's happening? What time is it? Okay, I gotta go figure some things out. So he wanders off into the night towards his old castle with a banshee and necromancer in tow. Luther wasn't at the ceremony. He shows up after the fact to see what this power was his uncle was talking about. Sir Marlolf finds this new guy because he saw Sir Armand earlier. Sir Marlolf is guarding the crypt and he goes, hey, your uncle kind of let out like the greatest evil Bretonia's ever known. Your uncle is a piece of shit. And now you're morally obligated to help me defeat this thing because you let him out. And Luther's like, oh no, how could this be? And he goes off onto a grand quest, but this isn't a video about him, so just know there are some knights trying to hunt the Red Duke down. Cool. Red Duke gets back to his old castle. He tells the necromancer Renar to go inside and announce his homecoming, and Renar looks at a very broken rubble that you can easily see all the way through. It's not even a castle anymore, it's like the foundations of a castle, and goes, bro, there's nothing there. And the Red Duke is just staring into the distance like, ah, my castle. And Renar and the reader start to realize that the Red Duke is very insane now. Is very fucked up from his 1,000-year hunger. And the fact that he's not a Vargulf is impressive, but man, he didn't make it through intact. So the Red Duke just can't conceive that time has changed and his castle isn't there. So Renard goes inside, the Red Duke goes inside, the Red Duke thinks everybody's where it is, and then he comes across a spot where his wife's picture used to be, and it's not there anymore. And then that kind of snaps him out of it in the moment. He's like, oh, my whole castle's destroyed, what the shit? And he breaks down and cries. Like, he actually cries as a vampire, which is really interesting. Like, that he still has feelings after all this time. But he really, really loved his wife. So, now he's kind of a broken man without much of a purpose. He loved his wife. She's dead. He loved being the Duke of Aquitaine. His brother took that from him, as, you know, in his perspective. And now all he has left is the love of swordsmanship. So he gets up, decides this fortress is screwed, calls out for Sir Corbinian, the White King. And Reynard the Necromancer's kind of looking at him like, bro, there's no one here. We've been over this. This castle is raised. And a door opens in this ruin, and Sir Corbinian just walks out. And he's like, you know, I mean, he's a White King. He doesn't say anything, but like he just kind of waves at him. And the Red Duke is like, my guy. And Sir Corbinian's like, my guy. And Reynard's like, how the fuck are you still here? No one has come into this ruin for 1,000 years and noticed a fucking White King hanging out? And Sir Corbinian's like, I got your knights too. And Red Duke's like, fuck yeah, you got my knights too. And Renard's like, what the actual fuck? Anyway. The Duke of Aquitaine, the current Duke, Duke Guillaume, gets word from Lothaire, the guy whose uncle raised the Red Duke, that the Red Duke is back. And he goes, ha! You're crazy! And he doesn't believe him. So, Aquitaine is not rallying its forces yet. The Red Duke is currently undetected in Bretonnia. With this time, he decides he needs to get some horsemen back. So he rides out to a nearby place to Sarenfield where a lot of his old knights fell. Now, he got some of his knights back, but like his army was huge, right? So Sir Corbinian and some of his knights got back to the castle, but a lot of them didn't. He gets to this area where his knights used to be, and Sir Marulf, the one who had been watching over his crypt, knew that as well and went to this place to go fight him. He fights, he leads some peasants valiantly against the Red Duke for a bit, but the Red Duke actually still has really good battle sense, and he's a fucking vampire, and he's the best swordsman that ever lived. So Sir Marulf's defense is in vain. Sir Corbinian actually ends his life, strikes him down, and the Red Duke gets another regiment of Black Knights, and he resurrects Sir Marulf and starts calling him De God of All. De God of All! The old, the steward that he had that betrayed him, but then he turned him into his first vampire thrall. They actually find De God of All, and he's like, my lord, you've come back for me. And the Red Duke goes, nope, and shuts him back in his crypt, and it's very funny. It just nopes him. And then instead of having the actual De God of All, he resurrects a different knight, Sir Marulf, and goes, you're De God of All now. And Marulf's like, what? And he's like, De God of All, you know how I like my wine. Bring it to me that way. And he's like, what, bro? And Reynard the Necromancer goes over to him. He's like, dude, listen, just go with it. Just fucking go with it. He has no idea where he is. So, with his Black Knights in tow, he goes to do some murders. He murders the Dumaine household because he still hates their great-great-great-grandfather for not killing him before he became a vampire monster. And because technically De Elbeek, who resurrected him, asked him to. And he's like, well, I was going to go do it anyway, so might as well just pretend I'm doing the bidding of the person who brought me back to unlife. Might as well. So he sieges the estate, knocks it down, and then Sir Armand, that guy earlier we saw that was like the best swordsman to ever live, and he was kind of the main character of the human side of the book. Yeah, he gets completely fucked. Just super bodied. It was horrifying. That was actually one of the best bait and switches I've read in a long time, because up until this point, you think Sir Armand's going to be the main character of this book, and he runs into the Red Duke, and the Red Duke's fighting his dad, Count Aragon. That's his name, right? 1 second. Yeah. Count Aragon. So, he's beating up Count Aragon, and then Sir Armand shows up to save his father, and you think, like, okay, his father's gonna die, and then Sir Armand will lose to the Red Duke, but he'll team up with Lothaire and try and stop the Red Duke, whatever. No, not at all. The Red Duke's like, you're the best swordsman in all of Aquitaine. I'd like to see that. Gets off his horse, pulls out his sword, he's like, on guard, boy, and slaps the shit out of him. It's really funny. And he has him on the ground. He's just like, the fact that you even called yourself the best swordsman in Aquitaine pisses me off so much, and murders him right there. And he kind of forgets the Count existed and walks away. So, Count Aragon is the last of the Dumains, the last of the Beaks. Luther shows up late, sees a burning wreckage, meets up with Count Aragon, and they together go to Duke Guion, and they say, hey, Duke Guion, I know you didn't listen to me. I know you said I'm a crazy person. Here is my mortal enemy. I fucking hate this guy. Hey, Count Aragon, who attacked you? It was the Red Duke, sire. Okay, both of us fucking hate each other. We're both telling you the Red Duke is here. And he goes, all right, I'll believe that. If you two agree on this, then you're not just fucking with me. Cool. So now, Aquitaine is aware the Red Duke is back, and they're starting to raise levies, starting to get knights together. They're forming an army. The Red Duke is on borrowed time. Unfortunately, he doesn't know what time he's in, so the Red Duke keeps wandering around the countryside trying to siege towns he did in the past that are no longer there, that either when he raised them in the past, people never rebuilt there, so they're already raised, or people just moved on due to economic reasons. So he's like sieging places that are abandoned. He's wandering around. He keeps switching his goals between what's smart right now because he's a commander, because he knows what he needs to be doing, and what he was doing in the past. So his army's kind of meandering about, and this gives Aquitaine time to build up forces. Meanwhile, Raynar, the necromancer, is desperately trying to steer the Red Duke towards the crypt of the Horse Lords. It's where pretty much every great hero of Bretonnia has ever been buried. There are so many amazing knights there that if he gets that army, he'll be unstoppable. And Raynar's trying to guide him there, but he keeps getting distracted. He wants to siege the witches, he calls it the Witches' Tower, but it's a tower of wizardry where the prophetess Isabeau used to live, and he's still mad at her for, imprisoning him. But now she's dead. Isilda is the current prophetess, but he doesn't care. So he sieges that for a little bit, then he gets distracted and bored and wanders away, because Raynar kind of snaps him back into the present. He's like, this doesn't matter. We need to go get to the Horse Lords before Bretonnia shows up and kicks your ass. So they wander, and he gets to the realm of the Horse Lords. He resurrects some of them, like maybe a tenth of them. But while he's in the middle of it, the Bretonnians show up with a plan. And they've noticed that they're like, his attack patterns don't make any sense. And the prophetess says his attack patterns make perfect sense if you read this history book. And they tracked it, and the Red Duke is doing everything he used to do in the first war against King Louis. And they go, oh, okay, he's obsessed with that old war. All right, so they grab an old banner from, like, the armory of King Louis, like it's his banner. And they ride out there with a single horseman, and they wave it at the Red Duke in the distance while he's resurrecting the Horse Lords. And 1/10 of the way done, he turns around, and he's like, King Louis. And he, like, completely goes back into the past, and he can't remember where he is. And Raynar, the necromancer, runs up to him. He's like, dude, finish resurrecting the Horse Lords, and we can take over all of Bretonnia. Just focus. And the Red Duke's like, you don't talk to me that way, peasant, and murders him. Just murders him right there. That's awesome. And then he takes the Horse Lords he's resurrected and the army he already had, and he rides after the banner carrier as fast as possible. The fight is on. The banner carrier is trying to lead him back to Sarenfield. But all along the way, they tried to stall him because Aquitaine's still getting its shit together. They had this one plan where they broke a bridge over a large river, and they're like, aha, he won't get across there. And the Red Duke gets there. He turns to all of his crypt horrors and crypt ghouls, anything that still breathes. He kills it, resurrects it as a zombie or a skeleton, and then marches his entire undead army through the river since they don't have to breathe. And the Bretonnians are like, okay, fuck, this guy's kind of smart still. They show up at the battle for Sarenfield, the second battle for Sarenfield this time. The Red Duke is back, and Duke Guion and all of his forces have a plan. They have a whole bunch of archers and spearmen. They're going to fire arrows at these guys as they cross Sarenfield, and then when they're overextended on this big flat field, the Bretonnian knights will charge in on the sides, get good shots in, and then they can retreat through the spearmen and set up again while archers rain in. They have this whole plan. The Red Duke has a couple knights he killed on the way, and he raises them up on a stick, reanimates their bodies in front of the Bretonnians, and makes them wiggle. And he's like, I have your wiggling friends. The Bretonnians on the ground go, that right there is bait. I'm gonna take it. And they sprint straight at him. So, Duke Eon is definitely trying to get his forces to stop fucking charging into their deaths, but they won't listen to him. So all these Bretonnian knights with their honor all butthurt charge straight into skeleton spearmen and start getting massacred. It's a terrible, terrible time. The Red Duke and his Blood Knights countercharge with his Black Knights also. They start killing a lot of Bretonnians, and Duke Eon can't do anything about it. He can't stop him. And the prophetess Iselda puts her hands on a very special crypt of it's the Grail Knight Galan's crypt, but it'll be important later. She puts her hand on it, draws magical energy from it, and sends out a giant beam of light that kills about half of the Red Duke's army. She knows that that'll attract his attention, but she sees all these knights dying. She's like, well, if this battle's going to be won, I have to draw his attention, and it's going to get me killed. So she launches the giant wave of light. The Red Duke sees half his army get obliterated, doesn't like that whatsoever, and rides up to just stab her in the fucking chest. Before he gets there, Duke Gion dives out of the sky behind him and gets in a bit of a fight. Now, the Red Duke was about to body him, but then he snarls like, "You will die, brother, King Louis." And the Duke Gion's like, "King Louis? No, I'm Duke Gion." And the Red Duke kind of sees his face and is like, "What? You're not who I think you are." And he holds his head because he's like, "My head hurts. I don't know where I am. What's going on?" And the Duke Gion's about to take this moment and kill the Red Duke once and for all when he gets stabbed in the back by Sir Corbinian, the bro of the century. This guy's always there when he needs him. Anyway, Sir Corbinian stabs the Duke in the back. The Duke's like, "Oh, what the shit?" Turns around, Sir Corbinian hacks his Pegasus' wings off, and then the Pegasus crushes him to death, and I think Gion even stabs him. So Corbinian dies after being a superhero. And as Gion gets his shit back together and turns around, the Red Duke is not holding his head anymore. The Red Duke is very much present and slaughters Duke Gion. So the current Duke of Aquitaine, remember that, the current Duke of Aquitaine got slaughtered by the Red Duke. And the rest of the army is being led by that Duke's only son. I think it's Richmond, but he doesn't really matter. Anyway, the Red Duke turns back to Iselda and stabs her, and she's dying. And then with her dying words, she reveals to him the truth. The truth is that Duke, he was a Duke. I keep saying that, but the Grail Knight Galand, who she had her hand on the crypt to steal its power, she tells the Red Duke that Duke Galand is his son. And the Red Duke's like, "That's impossible." And she goes, "Yes. Your wife killed herself after she heard of your murder because she also heard of the plot to take your land. And she knew that her infant son, who had been born 9 months after he left for the Crusades, would be killed. So she had kept him secret because without the Red Duke around, she just wasn't confident she could protect him. But anyway, she killed herself so that all suspicion would be brought away from the boy, and the baby was transported to the prophetess Isabeau, the one of the past, in secret. Isabeau knew exactly who his son was and all these things. Well, when the Red Duke was dead, there was no one to protect this son. So if the I know I'm being confusing. The Red Duke's dead, so his wife hears this. There's no one to protect this infant child that is hers. And if anybody knows this child is alive, he's the rightful heir to the Duchy of Aquitaine, and the same people that killed the Red Duke will kill him. So she killed herself and sent the baby off to the prophetess Isabeau. Because if she went with the baby, they would wonder where she went, they would track her down, they'd find a baby she's holding, and they'd figure it out. So she needed to be dead, apparently. I don't know if I agree, but that was her thinking. So the prophetess Isabeau has this baby. Now, after King Louis gets back, and he kills his brother, he was busy, and the prophetess Isabeau brings this baby to him and says, "By the way, this is your brother's baby." King Louis raises him, names him Galand, makes sure he becomes a Grail Knight, raises him to be a true hero of Bretonnia, gives him all these awesome feats he completes, and he gives him the Duchy of Aquitaine. So the Red Duke's son ruled Aquitaine. That was never taken from him. And this revelation is horrifying to the Red Duke because then his brother wasn't out to get him. His brother was just fighting him because his brother thinks he's a monster at this point. And that makes a lot more sense. His brother never betrayed him, and he was like super close to his brother, so that's a really big relief. But he also realizes that he's hated his brother for all this time for no reason. He realized that like his son took over Aquitaine, if that's true, which means he just murdered his great-grandson, and his great-great-grandson is the last of his line. So if he takes Aquitaine back for himself, he would have to kill his family to do it, and like that was part of the whole reason he was pissed. So he was like, it can't be true. goes into the crypt, sees Duke Galland, and somehow knows it's his son. I don't know. The book doesn't explain how he instantly knows, but he knows it's true, and he runs away from the battle because he can't win it without killing his own line, and he's just not about that. And he realizes that, you know, his brother never betrayed him, and it's just like his whole world view fell apart around him. So he runs away, undefeated, but no longer with the will to fight. His army falls apart without him, and the Bretonnians win the day. Now, it was prophesized that if the Dumains and the Beaks could come together, they could at last slay the Red Duke, but they did not. The two characters you're following, Count Ergon and Luthair, end up in each other's way. One of them leaves the other to die, and Count Ergon rides off on his own to fight the Red Duke, where he is promptly murdered. And that's really it. The Red Duke's just out and about now. He's significantly less crazy now that he's not obsessed with revenge and all these things. He just wanders the Bretonnian countryside trying to figure out what he should be doing with his life, keeping an eye on Aquitaine, making sure his great-great-great-grandson's doing all right. So, yeah, he's just kind of a weird pseudo-protector, pseudo-wraith. He's around. So, yeah, that's the Red Duke. He has an interesting story, interesting guy, multiple layers. And I've rambled for long enough, so goodbye. Roar. Subscribe, yes.